Hi, this is Jamie Rig for Engadget and we're here checking out Nokia's new Lumia 720. It was unveiled in February alongside the budget-friendly 520, with both serving to finish out Nokia's Windows Phone 8 20 series refreshes. Inside you're looking at a dual-core 1GHz Snapdragon S4 Plus with Adreno 305 GPU and half a gig of RAM. These internals are common to several Windows phones and puts the 720 in the lower tier, with most of the higher tier running a 1.5 GHz S4 Plus with Adreno 225 GPU and 1 gig of RAM. Up front we've got a single sheet of Gorilla Glass 2 covering the 4.3-inch 800x480 display, with a small grey Nokia logo, 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera and earpiece up top. Below the screen are the back, home and search capacitive keys. On the bottom edge we find the micro USB port for charging and data transfer next to the microphone. Round to the right is the volume rocker, power button and two-step camera button, with a 3.5mm headphone port on the top edge next to a drawer for the micro SIM. The left side is bare apart from the drawer for a micro SD card of up to 64GB to supplement that 8GB of internal storage. The rectangular design looks great and is similar to Huawei's Ascend W1 and HTC's 8X. It's especially fitting given the right-angled nature of Windows Phone 8 UI. The 720 is fairly similar in footprint to the Galaxy S3 despite its smaller screen, but everything looks well in proportion. Compared to the Lumia 620, it's got a bigger surface area up front and is significantly thinner. The IPS LCD display with Nokia's clear black and sensitive touch technologies isn't high on the PPI scale with a WVGA resolution, but it looks good. Despite the higher PPI of the Lumia 620, the 720 screen is slightly better. Colours are vibrant and blacks are excellent. We won't talk exhaustively about Windows Phone 8, but this being a Lumia you get a handful of exclusive apps. Nokia's imaging software gives the camera more versatility, and you've also got access to Here City Lens, but curiously only the standard Here Drive, a sat-nav app bound to your SIM card's region. The cheaper, arguably lower-end 620 has the global and Nokia exclusive version called Drive Plus, currently in beta. The main camera has a 6.7 megapixel backside illuminated sensor, Carl's Zeiss lens and f1.9 aperture. It's capable of taking some great photos, especially close-ups, but the basic stock camera software means it's hard to make fine adjustments. You're more or less at the mercy of auto settings, which can produce mixed results. It's got excellent low light credentials, although not quite as good as the Lumia 920, and the camera is much better in natural than artificial light, which throws the colour balance off. Unfortunately, shutter speed is painfully slow. 720p video recording is pretty smooth at 30 FPS, although there's no optical stabilisation tech in here. In daylight it tends to alter exposure on the fly, which can mean inconsistent clips. It's pretty good in low light situations but can't achieve quite the same brightness as stills. All in all, it's a few notches above the 5 megapixel offerings which adorn other Windows Phone 8 handsets with the same internal specs. The wide-angle 1.3 megapixel camera up front is also fine for selfies or video chat, but suffers terribly in unfavourable conditions. It's hard to say much about the performance of the 720 that hasn't been said before. It shares exactly the same processor, RAM capacity and screen res as a slew of other Windows phones. Moving through the menus is swift and you can jump into core features like messages and settings instantly, while heavier apps like Nokia Music take upwards of 5 seconds to load. Windows Phone 8 is nice and light, so it doesn't struggle on specs that wouldn't have a good time with Android. App loading times aside, you won't catch it freezing or lagging. Web browsing is swift on both mobile and desktop sites. There's no lag when zooming in and it's not long before the whole website is back in view when you zoom out. With only half a gig of RAM, it's already excluded from running certain applications that require a gigabyte. The recently released first-person shooter Modern Combat 4 being one example. As more apps are starting to pop up in the store with this requirement, the 720 specs are already becoming dated. The 720 is available in the UK on pay-as-you-go for £300, around $458. The issue here is all other Windows phones that share the majority of specs with the 720 are significantly cheaper. Huawei's Ascend W1, for example, can be had on pay-as-you-go for only £109 or $167. And that handset has a Snapdragon S4 Plus running at 1.2 GHz, as opposed to the 720's 1 GHz processor. That makes it quite hard to justify the 720's price despite how great it looks and feels. You are getting a bigger battery, a more capable camera and the option of wireless charging, but we're just not sure these frills are quite enough when you're getting low-end internals.